read 40 books this year so far, and I'm going to go through all of my thoughts on them one by one, my ratings, and let you know what I thought of them, and if I think you should read them as well. Today is not the easiest day. We have been a grown-up today, gone to the car place, and I'm seriously thinking of becoming a mechanic because of the experience that we women seem to always have with mechanics and at car places, and getting our oil changed and getting our tires rotated and just all the things that come with owning a vehicle. I despise going because of the experience and because of the back and forth about explaining to me what's happening, how much it's going to be, walking me through the process, trying to sell me things I don't need. We need a place to be able to just take our cars, be talked to like intelligent human beings, but also explain what all of these things mean. I just had a very overwhelming experience there. Very frustrating, not very demure, not very mindful or considerate. So with that being said, I've read 40 books this year. 15 of those were nonfiction, okay? 15 nonfiction books this year so far. That's shocking to me because that's the most of one category that I've read. So 15 nonfiction, 5 fantasy books, 14 romance, 1 mystery, which was like a summer mystery, and 4 general fiction, and I have DNF'd 2 books. Okay, so the first 4 nonfiction books that I have read this year, and this will be illuminating to why I have so many nonfictions for the year, is I have read Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Job from the Bible. One of my 2024 goals was to read the Bible in a year, and obviously if you do the math, the Bible has 66 books, and I have read 5 of them. So I think it's safe to say that I'm not going to finish it in a year, which is really sad. I do think I can finish it in like 2 or 3 years, and I wanted to count them individually because I wanted to ensure that when I'm reading through the Bible that I'm actually studying it and digesting it and not just reading it to say that I've read the full Bible. So I decided I was going to count the books of the Bible towards my reading goal this year to, 1, encourage me to read the Bible when I'm wanting to be reading, and 2, the Bible is large. It has 66 books in it, even though it's considered one book. So I decided that I was going to log them on Goodreads individually, and so that I can kind of see the pace that I'm moving at, and I'm obviously going really slow. Part of that is because at our church, we go through books of the Bible, and they aren't at the beginning of the Bible right now. I've been in other books that haven't really correlated to where I should be on the plan. So I want to get back on track for that for the rest of the year and make a little more progress in my studying of it and my understanding of the Old Testament. The first fiction book that I read of the year, which is kind of crazy because it doesn't feel like that long ago, was Once Upon a Broken Heart by Stephanie Garber. This, I'm sure you all have seen. This is, I guess, the spin-off series of Caraval, which I did not read Caraval, so I have them. They're sitting right there. I rated this book 4 stars. Loved the mixed media kind of like reports and stuff in here. I thought that was really interesting. Now that I'm like looking back at some of the dialogue, I should continue reading the other 2 in this series because it was really good and I read it really fast. But I really loved this. I loved Evangeline. The settings are just so vivid, and I could see everything that was happening in this book in my head. So I really enjoyed this. I gave this 4 stars. The next book I read was Atomic Habits by James Clear. This was actually the second time that I read this book. I think I read it back in 2022. I read it again this year, kind of as a jump start on 2024. I really enjoyed this book. If you struggle with making habits, sticking to disciplines, making routines and actually following through on them, this book is going to be a really good read for you. This book was really helpful in terms of finding ways to work out, to read, and it snowballing into a changed lifestyle. Next book I read this year was Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. This is the second book in the Letters of Enchantment series. I believe it's just a duology. I gave this a 5-star. I feel like I can't really say much without giving away the first book, but the plot was great. I loved the character development in this book. I loved the setting. I loved all the little side characters. It was a little lengthy, which I loved. I loved getting more of these characters. As soon as I started this book and got back into the realm of it and this world, it just felt like a hug. And this is going to be the perfect time going into the fall to read this when it's snuggly and you can just get under a blanket. I love this story. I love these characters. 5 out of 5. Definitely recommend. The next book that I read was actually, I want to say, kind of a novella or a short story. It's about 100 pages, but it's The Exception to the Rule by Christina Lauren. This is in that Kindle Unlimited series with some of the authors like Christina Lauren, Ashley Poston, and they're kind of like short romance stories. I did not rate this. I read it really quick. Obviously, it's 100 pages, but I didn't rate it. I thought it was good. It was cute. That's really all I can say about it. It was cute, but not like super memorable. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think I remember like some emails or something, but that also could have been a different book. I don't know. Sometimes they run together. The next book I read was Good Material by Dolly Alderton, and this is kind of like a rom-com, but not. It's about like breakups, so that was a really interesting dynamic. I really enjoyed the writing of this one. It's a lot about how to use comedy and humor to deal with your sadness. I really love the cover on this one. I would read another Dolly Alderton book. I know she has some non-fictions out, but I did like her writing. I gave this 4 stars. If I'm looking back at it, I might lower the rating to like a 3.75, but I just don't remember too much about the book. It was a good time. I do remember that, and I read it pretty quickly, and I like the cover. But that's kind of all I remember other than the breakups and like trying to be funny. The next book I read was Addicted to You by Krista and Becca Ritchie. This is part of the Addicted series, and I know there's like the Calloway Sisters series. I have been told that if you like Magnolia Parks, to read the Addicted series. But this book left me very disappointed. It left me desperately wishing it had been better. I wanted to like the characters, but I just didn't. This one is set on Lillian Lowe, and I know some people, this is their favorite series ever, and that these are their favorite characters. But to compare this to Magnolia Parks, I just didn't see why, other than the fact that they're dramatic and a lot happens. And maybe the series is worth continuing, but I just did not like this. I gave it 2.75 stars. I don't know if I'll continue this series. I would love to find another series that's like Magnolia Parks, but this just wasn't it for me. I don't know why I didn't connect with this book. I just didn't really care a lot about what they were going through. I do know people have said that the first book is not the best, but it just didn't leave me wanting to read the rest of the series. And I probably will at some point, but maybe it's just these characters that I don't love, and maybe I'll like some of the other ones, but it just fell flat for me, if I'm being honest. And I really, really wanted to like them, and I really wanted to, you know, for lack of better words, become addicted to this series like I am to Magnolia Parks, but I unfortunately did not. Let me know if I should continue this series. Does it get better? Are the Calloway Sister books better? However, the next book I read, Magnolia Parks Into the Dark, when I tell you, this has been my favorite book of the year so far. It is almost 700 pages. This is a big book. It is like the bigger version, I believe. The way I didn't even write a review on this book, I just gave it 5 stars. I couldn't put words to this. I'm going to use this time to tell you again, in case you have missed it the other times that I've said it. If you pick up any book if you're wanting to start a new series, let it be Magnolia Parks. This is my favorite series of all times. I even told my husband like a couple weeks ago, if our house was on fire, I'm grabbing these books. He got these for me this past Christmas, and when I tell you, I cried. I'm pretty sure I cried when I opened them. I could just spend the whole video telling you why I love these books and why I love these characters, but this is the last Magnolia book, so I can't really say much about this plot either, because it would give away the whole rest of her books and even some of the Daisy books. The back of this, so cute with the little deer, and then when you read this book, that means a lot. It makes so much sense. But this is my favorite book of 2024. I don't see any other book being better than this year. And stay tuned, because word has it that I will be rereading these for the first time at the end of the month with a buddy. So, knowing what happens in this book, the way I'm so excited to reread these books, like I can feel tears in my eyes right now. I love these characters so much. Jessa Hastings created a masterpiece with this series, and if this is the only book I could read forever, I wouldn't be mad about it. If I could only read this series over and over and over, I'd be totally happy with it. You need to pick up Magnolia Parks. Even if you didn't absolutely love the first book, keep going, because by the time you get to this one, you will start to appreciate that first book and those years of their life, and you will want to go back and reread it. You should read this book. 5 stars. This is it. This is the one for the year. The next book I read was another nonfiction. It's called Christian Worldview, A Student's Guide. We work with the youth at our church, and so this is kind of like a basis of the Christian worldview. And so I read that for church, kind of made like some highlights in it. It's kind of like a shorter book, but it's basically how your worldview and everything that you believe influences, what you do in your life. And whether you know it or not, like, you have constructed a worldview in your mind. And as a Christian, how do we use our faith and integrate that into our worldview on purpose, like cognitively understanding that the way that we view God impacts how we view others and impacts, the things that we do in our life and how we operate on a day-to-day basis. It was a really succinct way to start to understand as a student how your worldview impacts your day-to-day. The next book I read was also a nonfiction. It's called Raised to Stay by Natalie Runyon. This book is about being in ministry and some of the scars that she had. And the little tagline is persevering in ministry when you have a million reasons to walk away. I was raised as a pastor's kid, and so a lot of things that were in this book did resonate with things that I saw in my parents, and I thought it was a really great book. I highlighted a lot in here. One thing that I think could apply to things beyond ministry that I highlighted and circled was she was so afraid of, being in a temporary place and having to move and being called somewhere else. And this says, don't be afraid to say yes to a loving God and loving people because of what came out of your parents' vault. And this is talking about, some of their hurts. And then it says, it happened to your parents. Your story has a different ending. We're not going anywhere. Decorate your office. So it's basically saying she wouldn't decorate her office because she was anxious and nervous that she was going to be uprooted and move. And I think that, even applies to a home. I have found that we've moved several times since getting married, and my decorations have become less and less, just very minimal, other than my books, obviously. But we have one photo of us hanging on the wall and then a sign with our name on it in our kitchen. But other than that, we just don't have a lot of things decorated. And I circled that. Decorate your office while you're here and while you're at the job that you're at, or you are, living with your family, or you're just in a tough season, you're worried about staying or moving. Decorate your office. Enjoy where you're at. It's okay to decorate and not know if you're putting roots down where you're at. You can enjoy where you're at, even if you're not sure if you're going to be there forever. The next book I actually DNF'd. It was Butcher and Blackbird. It was our book club pick of the month with Sarah. And it made me so uncomfy. I cannot eat orzo pasta anymore. Thankfully, I did not read the ice cream scene, so I don't even really want to talk about this book. I didn't finish it. I am not reading Leather and Lark or whatever the next book is. I just, not my style. The next book I read was another nonfiction called Love Thy Body. This was recommended from our pastor, and this book was just really coinciding with what we were teaching our students about and understanding, their bodies and how they were created. And so I really loved this book. I gave this 5 stars. I thought it was really helpful. If you have any questions or you want any recommendations about Christian books, definitely let me know, and I can happily send those to you. The next book I read was Every Time I Go on Vacation, Someone Dies. And this was an arc on NetGalley by Catherine Matt. I gave this book 4.75 stars. It gave Knives Out Glass Onion vibes. It was very whodunit. It was funny. It was cute. I really had no idea who had done it until the end. So basically, they're all on a trip and someone feels like they're being threatened, and then people start to pop up missing or, gone. And they're all kind of together. And so it's figuring out who just did that and how did we miss it. 4.75 stars. I really enjoyed it. I would definitely read anything that she has written, especially if it's a mystery. The next book I read was Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I loved this book. 5 stars. The Unicorn Floaty. That was it for me. I loved the family dynamics that they discussed in this, and golden retriever vibes. I'll bring you soup when you're sick. Just the sweetest vibes. This was my first Abby Jimenez book, and I can't wait to read more of hers. This is in the Part of Your World series, and I believe they're all interconnected standalones, and so you don't have to read the others to read this one, but I think I'm going to go back and read them. Then I read Girl Abroad by Elle Kennedy. Our main female character goes to live overseas and thinks that she has been communicating with female roommates this entire time, and when she opens the door, they're guys, and they have names that she thought was female. And so she is going to be kind of new girling the situation, living with dude roommates, a love triangle. And some people, there's a trope in here that some people don't love, but I didn't think it was such a main point of the book that I could not get past. I really liked this book. I gave it 4.25 stars. It was my first Elle Kennedy book, and so I really enjoyed her writing. I would read more by her. Yeah, I thought it was cute. I thought it was fun. The drama and there was a little bit of a mystery happening, not super intense, but low-key mystery, and I really enjoyed it. I was wanting to continue reading it. I think I read it in a day, and so I binged it. Really enjoyed it. Would definitely read anything else by her. The next book I read and finished this series was The Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is the last book in the Lord of the Rings series. I have the little pocket versions of this book because I've had them for forever and finally finished the series, so I now need to watch the last movie. But I wanted to read these. I started this and Harry Potter at the same time and quickly realized I could not do that. I could not read both of them at the same time and understand the worlds of each. This book I gave 4 stars. I thought it wrapped up in a way that I wasn't expecting, and to say that I've gone my whole life with no spoilers in this series, so I'm not going to share too much about this, but these are the movie covers. I don't love them, but I do like that these are so old, and they were released being $7.99 a piece. They're made from Ballantine Books, and yeah, I really enjoyed this series. I can understand why Tolkien is, the original author of fantasy. It makes sense. The movies are really good. So my favorite book out of this entire series was The Hobbit, but my least favorite movie was The Hobbit. So if anyone here is listening from the film people, we need a better Hobbit movie. Why was it not cozy demure like the book? Why was it so intense and so long? I really enjoyed Lord of the Rings. I'm not super Lord of the Rings fan, but I do appreciate the writing and the world building and literally creating these words and these entire creatures that were, not popular at this time. I enjoyed it, and I definitely understand why he is considered the OG of fantasy. The next book I read was Funny Story by Emily Henry. This was a 4-star read for me. Not my favorite Emily Henry book. I would say my favorites are Happy Place #1, Beach Read #2, then Funny Story, then Book Lovers, then People We Meet on Vacation. I really enjoyed the setting of this book. I loved the banter. I loved the awkward setup, the funny story part of it. I thought that was really well written, and I had not really seen that in a book. I think I've seen a few movies have that idea, but not in a book. And so I really enjoyed it being written from Emily Henry. I love Emily Henry's writing. I know there's mixed reviews on this book, but I really enjoyed it. It's a 400-page book, so as a romance, that is kind of long. It didn't feel long for me. I ate it up. 4 stars. I would recommend it if you like Emily Henry and haven't read it and are on kind of the fence. I enjoyed it. I loved the main characters. The next 2 books that I read were nonfictions that I read for work. I work for a healthcare company, and so I'm not going to get into what those books were. One was an arc on NetGalley, so I was really excited to get that and have early access to that to use in our marketing. But those 2 I thought were super interesting, and they were just really medical driven, so I won't go too much into those. The next book I read was The Husbands by Holly Gramazio, I think is how you say it. This book essentially is kind of like a Groundhog's Day idea. Every time she opens the attic, she's getting a new husband. So this is a really interesting idea to me. And then when the husband goes back into the attic, he gets swapped for a different husband. So she's going through hundreds of husbands and living totally different lives. And when they just appear, it's as if she's been living that life the whole time. So she has to figure out, who are you? What do you do? What do we do? When the husband gets sent back and she gets a different husband, snowball effects, and it affects other aspects of her life. So I thought that was really, really interesting. I did give it a 3 stars. I felt like it was kind of repetitive, slow paced for a little bit. And I was like, okay, just pick one and keep them. It was good. I think the writing was really humorous and the idea was amazing. It just wasn't executed, to my taste, which obviously is not the point. It just wasn't one that I think about too often. I read 2 more nonfictions next. Surprise, surprise. One of them was Spiritual Disciplines for a Christian Life. This book goes through the spiritual disciplines from the Bible and how to walk those out in a day-to-day. Reading, worship, silence and solitude, journaling, fasting. The next book I read was This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. Unpopular opinion, I really loved Every Summer After by her. I gave it 5 stars. The lake, living there, it was very nostalgic for me, growing up at a lake. The ending, a lot of people had a lot of issue with. It's a fiction book, so I really enjoyed the book. I gave it 5 stars. However, this one I thought was mid. I gave it 3.75 stars. It kind of blends in with a lot of other books that I have been reading at the same time. It was a cute little summer read, but do I remember the characters' names? No. Do I remember really anything else that happened in it? No. Then after that, I jumped into a debut novel by Hannah Brown from The Bachelorette called Mistakes We Never Made. And it gave me very similar vibes to This Summer Will Be Different. And so I don't know which one was which. I gave it a 3.5 stars. They were very similar books, and reading them back to back, that was probably not the best idea because they really did blend together, and I have no idea which one was which. So 3.5 stars for that one. The next book I read was a beach read reread. And again, it was a 4.5 star book. I read it at the beach, which was immaculate. It made my heart so happy. I love Gus and January. I actually do know their names. I remember them. This is the second time I've read it, and I still loved it. I picked up on a lot of things that I didn't catch the first time, like in the setting and in the friends. I love Emily Henry. I'll say it again. I love Emily Henry. This is such a good book. Such a good summer book. Obviously, it's called Beach Read for a reason. I love the banter. I love the Grumpy Sunshine-ish. I love the back and forth. And so this is just a summer classic for me. The next book I read was Same Time Next Summer by Annabelle Monaghan. I'm going to put this in the exact same tier as This Summer Will Be Different and Mistakes We Never Made. I gave it 3.5 stars. I don't really remember what happened. It's a second chance romance. That's all I remember. I'm telling you, it's like I didn't read it, but I did, and I enjoyed it. I gave it 3.5 stars. The next book that I read was Firefly Lane by Kristen Hanna. I gave this book 5 stars. I loved it. I tried to start the show before I read this, and I didn't love it, and I did not finish it. I stopped after like 2 episodes, but I love this book. The emotion in this about friendship, girlhood, I don't know how ink on paper can do this to me. I was crying like a baby at the end. This book is a little bit longer. I think it's almost 500 pages, but just the sentiment about being friends and friendship lasting was just something that I needed to read in the moment. And being, later in my 20s and contemplating all of my friendships and girlhood and what it looks like to be an adult and have friends, this book was just everything I needed, and I gave it 5 stars. It was my first Kristen Hanna book, and so I'm excited to read more by her. I have The Nightingale to read soon, and if it's anything like this, I am going to love it. I read another nonfiction book next called Along Obedience in the Same Direction about discipleship, and it was also an arc of the, I think, 30-year anniversary version. And then I read Just Last Night by, I think it's Mary McFarlane, and this book was one of Emily Henry's favorite books, and so I read it and gave it 4.75 stars. It was really, really good. This is about a friend group, and 2 of them kind of have feelings for each other, but they're not saying anything about it, and then something happens in their friend group that brings them all really close together, and people start expressing their feelings, and is it possible for them to be together after being friends, or do they just need to move on with their lives? I really enjoyed the writing. I would read this author again for sure. 4.75 stars. I think I highlighted a lot in this book, and so anything that makes me highlight a bunch of quotes, like, that's good writing. I really enjoy it. The next book that I read was also an ARC, not through NetGalley. This was sent to me from the author, and it was Scalebound. It's a fantasy book coming out, I believe, September 14th. This was a clean fantasy book, no spice, no bad language, which I really loved. I like going into a book knowing that this is a safe bet. Like, I don't have to be on the lookout for anything, and I could just sit down and enjoy it. I gave it 4.25 stars. The world in there and the magic system was really fascinating to me. This book has dragons. It's kind of like Tangled or Rapunzel meets dragons and like Fourth Wing and dragons. I love the dragons. There's like different kinds of dragons in here, and they do different things. And so be on the lookout for this book to drop September 14th, Scalebound by Logan Piercy. She is a sweetheart. I would read anything this author has to write just because she's so sweet, and I can't wait for you guys to read it. Then I read an arc called Definitely Better Now. This book is about a recovering alcoholic, so look up trigger warnings if you're wanting to read this. This was in one of my reading blogs that I just posted a couple weeks ago, but if you want more thoughts about that, go check out my reading blog where this is in. Next, I read Reckless by Lauren Roberts. Obviously, this was a 5-star read. More thoughts about that are in my reading blog that I posted, but 5 stars. Love Lauren Roberts. I will accept no criticism on this book, please and thank you. And then the next book was also in my readathon, and this was a novel love story by Ashley Poston. I have heard her say that it is pronounced Poston, so I will forever now be saying Ashley Poston. This book was really cutesy. More thoughts, obviously, in my reading blog. I gave it 3.75 stars. I skipped Powerful. I read it back in May, but this is the novella between Powerless and Reckless, and I thought it was really cute. It is signed by Lauren Roberts, which is also in one of our blogs that I posted, like doing bookish things. But obviously I love Lauren Roberts, and I love this series, and anything she writes I will be purchasing and reading. Thank you. The last book I read was Ready, Fire, Aim by Michael Masterson. I shared a little bit of it in my reading blog, but it is about marketing and sales, so I read it for work, and it was really good. And then the book I read right after that, I ended up DNFing, and that was Flawless by Elsie Silver. I am soft DNFing it. I just was not feeling a cowboy romance right now. Like, just something about it, it was just not hitting. And then I am in the middle of All the Colors of the Dark by Chris Whitaker, and this book is gonna be one that I recommend for a long time. I think I'm about halfway through it, and It is mystery thriller. There's a little subplot of romance in it, and there's kids in the book, but the kids are written so well. And every chapter I'm on the edge of my seat wondering what's happening next. So those are the 41-ish books that I have read this year so far. Let me know if you've read any of them. Let me know where you're at on your Goodreads goals. I know I'm like 6 books behind, but I'm doing a readathon this weekend, so hopefully I can catch up on my reading goal. But thanks for watching and listening to me yap about these 40 books in detail. My reading goal is 75 books this year, so I'm really hoping I can hit that, and I think I can. But let me know what your reading goal is and where you're at on it. And if you have been following along, or if this is your first video, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel and to give me a little thumbs up on the video if you like it, if you like these types of videos. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye!